On my extreme right is Patrick Munene Cairo. Patrick Munene is with the Democratic Party of Kenya. He's seeking to be Nyeri County Governor. Also with us is Dr. Jambo Oundo, candidate ODM Funula constituency, Busia County. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. I'm sure you followed the events from the rally yesterday of the NASA in Nakuru. I'll begin with you, sir. Your thoughts on some of the declarations that were made, and let's begin specifically in regarding that boycott that was announced to the elections if the reversal of that judgment on the announcement of the presidential election at the Tallying Center in the constituency level is concerned.
Thank you so much for hosting us here today morning. First and foremost, I think on the issue of the IEBC, we have come through a long process where the commissioners were changed, and it is unfair that at this point in time, then we are talking of saying that we shall not go by what they have outlined as how they will conduct their elections. Somebody who is ready for the elections then does not go back and say that they want to boycott the elections simply because the results are going to be transmitted in a certain way. Yes.
All right. Do you agree with him, or do you find merit in the argument being put out by the National Super Alliance that if things do not work as they currently stand in law, in that the presidential election results are announced at the constituency level and that becomes final, if that doesn't happen, that it opens it up to interference, which is what they're fearing, that, second checking that or it going up to the national level opens that process up for manipulation?
Any political process, any elections must be guided by the law. Mm-hmm. The moment the law is deliberately flouted, then we start reading mischief, we start reading some kind of things that wants to happen, basically to defranchise the Kenyan people and to rob them of their right to exercise their political or their constitutional position in respect to elections. We sincerely believe that the law is clear. All that we are asking IEBC to do is to respect the law, period.
And IEBC is respecting the law in that they are in court appealing that decision. So isn't it the contrary, NASA intimidating and interfering with that process of lawmaking and the rule of law? Because IEBC has a case it's making. Instead of making public pronouncements about it, it has moved to court. So isn't NASA the one to be questioned in that they're interfering with the process that's in court?
The declaration was made by a constitutional court, the High Court. We sincerely feel with the little time left to the election, any attempt to appeal is just basically an attempt to compromise the election process. Mm-hmm. There isn't much time left. In any case, this has been a point of contention for many, many years. You have seen in the previous elections, results announced at the polling center. When they come to the National Tallying Center, they are cooked and changed. We saw this in 2007. Mm-hmm. There were cases last in the 2013 elections. All that what NASA is saying, please let's respect the law, let's comply what Kenyans have always wanted, that the person gazetted to be the presiding officer or the returning officer is the one who is held responsible for the announcement of the results.
But the law, just to take you back on your point, highlights and stipulates very clearly that the IEBC chairperson is the returning officer for the presidential race. That's the argument the IEBC is putting out, sir.
Precisely, is the returning officer, but it's not the presiding officer.
And the Constitution recognizes the returning officer.
But the data is generated by the presiding officer. The returning officer has really no powers in law to change the details and the results announced at the polling station. All right. Why? Mm-hmm. Why do they want to change?
All right. So you're hearing this argument. I'd like to hear your thoughts on his thoughts on this.
Definitely, the chairman of the IEBC has to satisfy himself before he declares those results. And the only way he can satisfy himself is first receiving whatever is coming from down there and then verifying and checking and confirming so that he is the one who even knows who is the presiding officer or who is the returning officer at the constituency level. So he is able to verify and say, this is the returning officer who we assigned for a particular constituency. And that verification, he looks at the data and says, this is okay, then this can now go to the national tally. As opposed to the argument which is being said that he now delegates, which he is not allowed to in law.
But the High Court had agreed for that delegation. The High Court, which is now what the IBC is seeking to reverse through that appeal, had agreed that this matter be fully and be seen as final at the constituency level, and to avert what we have witnessed or we've seen such allegations in the past of interference, so that you have all of these various parties having their observers or officers, agents at the polling station. So they want it to conclusively end there and not leave room. Don't you find that there's merit, given Kenya's history, to ensure that that becomes the level, what NASA is arguing, the constituency level, where this matter is finalized?
We also must take into account the arrangements which have been made by the IEBC. From the BVR kits, all these presidential candidates are going to have their agents at every constituency or at every polling station and so on and so on, to also verify what is coming up. But you see, the chair of the IEBC then cannot be compelled to delegate this duty, yet he, in law, he's the one who takes responsibility for how these results are going to be announced and how they're going to be transmitted. If the returning officer at the constituency level does the wrong thing, or anybody else signs the form, and possibly in a far-off constituency somewhere in Mandera or something, and somebody else signs the form, yet he's not the recognized returning officer, then what happens to the chair of IEBC? Because the law was structured in that way, and I believe the measures they have put for these elections, and of course the measures which the political parties and the presidential candidates have put are sufficient for them to now let the IEBC chair do what he has been mandated in law.
Right.
But if we now go and say, let us change this now, at this point in time, then I think we are going to be bringing a bit of a problem.
Right.
Yes.
Why doesn't NASA wait for the ruling from the Court of Appeal, and perhaps, if they are aggrieved by the same, appeal further to the Supreme Court? Because when then a matter is before court and pronouncements outside of court sound as if they are threatening whatever cause of action if court rules a certain way, is that the space we are seeking to have as a country?
First of all, we need to be very clear. We believe that the courts of law in this country are fairly independent. They cannot be persuaded by noises being made outside the court. In any case, NASA is not a party to the case. All they are saying that they read mischief in an attempt by the AIBC to appeal a ruling grounded in law and what actually the law says. Of course, this argument that they need to verify, do all these kind of things, simply seems to be a diversionary, because an election is a process, it's not an event. We trust and believe IBC by now should have put into place mechanisms to ensure that whoever they're recruiting to be the presiding officer are people who are very clear and people of high integrity and people who can actually act as required by law. If I'm not wrong, it criminalizes forgery of election results. So let everybody carry their cross. You delegate, yes, but it doesn't mean you cede responsibility. And if you are in charge, the chair has got no capacity to be everywhere in the over 40,000 polling stations. He must learn to delegate and trust the people he delegates to. We are seeing, this has been all stories. Remember the issue that we can substitute electronic system with the manual system. You see, there's just a build-up of mischief, which we basically want to alert the world to know that there's a possibility of some games being played. So essentially, yes, we will wait for the ruling, but we do believe the Court of Appeal will definitely uphold the law as stated in the law.
In the law. So when NASA says they read mischief in IEBC appealing this particular matter, saying even to the extent that IEBC is doing the bidding of Jubilee, that they appear to be on the same camp and reading from the same script, do you agree?
No, I don't agree because, like I said at the beginning, we have gone through a process of re-engineering the IEBC. There was a clamor which came again from NASA saying that let us change the commissioners, and that was done. Now, what is happening by their pronouncements when a case is in court is simply tantamount to badgering the judiciary and kind of trying to put them in a position whereby you have to go this way or this will happen. Because when you start giving public pronouncements as to ultimatums, that if you rule in this direction, then we shall not participate in the elections, then I think that now is what you call a classic case of judicial interference.
Yeah. All right, let's, as we keep talking about these matters that are emerging, continue on to the choice of Nakuru to hold that rally for NASA, of course, following the unveiling of the flag bearer and as well as the lineup for National Super Alliance. That is where we saw Uhuruto launched ahead of the last election. So was it to beat Jubilee Party to perhaps what is seen as a favor from Nakuru?
Well, two things. Random selection.
Really? That was
Yeah,
random?
selection.
I thought there's a lot of planning that goes to these things.
Then it just happened to have picked on Nakuru. But secondly, Nakuru being what it is, a mixed place where literally you have a reflection of Kenya.
Cosmopolitan.
It's a cosmopolitan area. It was probably in the right direction to start the political activities in Nakuru. So basically, we just feel there is really nothing sinister, or there was no copying and paste. It was basically a choice, a venue. It could have been elsewhere. The NASA flag bearer was selected in Nairobi here. At Uhuru Park, was unveiled at Uhuru Park. So this was just the first venue for political rallies. We shouldn't read so much. There isn't so much in it.
All right, before we go to break, your thoughts?
My thoughts are they are possibly looking at Nakuru being the epicenter of the Rift Valley.
Yeah.
It has significant number of votes. And possibly their assumption is that they can be able to claw some of the followers of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And to me, I think that would be a bit far-fetched. The gap we had even in Nakuru County in the 2013 elections, I don't foresee that changing. It will probably be a ratio which will just continue.
Yeah.
And I believe that President Uhuru Kenyatta will still command a significant lead in the Rift Valley.
All right.
Yes.
Gentlemen, continue to stay with us. We'll continue with this conversation here on News Center in the next hour, even as we look at those numbers we've had been put out there. NASA talking about 10 million, Jubilee saying winning with 70%, which